Hey guys, so I am prepping for a class on creating fleur-de-lis sun catchers from laser cut acrylic. I don't yet have my laser cut fleur-de-lis. Can't talk today. I need to check in on that, but I wanted to do some preliminary tests on things that are meant to replicate the look of stained glass. So recently I shared a class that I taught on creating stained glass inspired bookmarks using acrylic bookmarks and acrylic markers. I'm looking for something maybe a little more translucent. So first of all, I'm kind of taking some inspiration by this paint by number acrylic surface kit because it has kind of this stained glass look. I wanted to do some of my experimenting on the acrylic bookmarks that I already have. So these same bookmarks. And I have a few different tools for this. I also have some things for actually painting on glass, but I'm going to do that at another time because I actually have these like little glass frames. They're basically like floating frames that I wanted to try doing like faux stained glass with. So I'm kind of saving it for that. But this is the year that I wanted to try a bunch of new things, and playing around with stained glass is one of them. So one of the things I want to try out today is Deco Art stained glass paint. This is a translucent paint medium, and it also comes with what is probably puff paint. It's 3D liquid leading, but it's not actually lead. And it feels pretty light, so it is probably puff paint. It's dimensional liquid leading. And then you bake this. You let it cure for 4 days, and then you bake it with these. So that's different. So whatever you would do with this, it needs to be something that can tolerate being in the oven, or you can air dry it for 21 days. So this might not be the best thing for an in-person class because they need to be able to set it somewhere and let it dry flat. And then this also, you allow it to cure for 4 days. Oven safe surfaces, you can bake it at 275 for 30 minutes, or you can allow it to air dry for 21 days. It says that this is neither of these are for use on food vessels. Low odor, intermixable, permanent hand wash for safe finish. I am going to be doing this on acrylic, so I don't think I need to worry about that because I'm not eating off of it. And then I also have a cheaper version, which might be what we do for class, similar to the pin you see here. So these are sold for, like, it says paint pins, but these are sold for Suncatchers. And packs like this are much cheaper than the Deco Art. It seems to be the same color repeated, so that would actually work out pretty well for class use. And another thing I wanted to try is actually incredibly simple. Just plain old alcohol markers, because alcohol markers will actually mark on plastic surfaces. And the only thing that would remove them, I mean, you could scratch them off, but we could seal them. But the only thing that would remove them would be rubbing alcohol. So I'm going to designate one of my bookmarks as the tester. I don't really have 21 days to play around with it, but I'll try to figure something out. I'll leave the the film on the back, set these aside for a moment, and bring you guys in closer. So I already know that acrylic marker will work decently well on this. So we're going to start with the alcohol marker. It makes a beautiful noise, and it seems like it is very, very faint. Okay, we got some color here. So if we're using alcohol marker for this, we may need to choose darker colors. You're also not going to be able to layer really well because it's going to kind of push back. Let me show you guys. Okay, you see that? It's going to kind of push back the color. So you can do like intrusions, but you can't really do layers the way you would with alcohol markers normally. but you can get some very light color using alcohol markers. Next easiest thing would be the Suncatcher pens. And I'm also going to try out puff paint pens with you guys. Since I have puff paint, figured I might as well try it. Okay, so, oh, it just pulls off. So it's a very fine amount. I'm going to try first. Okay. These are very easy to squeeze. It'll be interesting to see how long these take to dry. They do seem to be self-leveling. I am going to go get a brush and we're going to try applying it like a glaze. All right, so I don't think these would work well with like a lot of water added to them, but I do want to protect the brush. So this is just an inexpensive brush for acrylics. Honestly, I could probably dab more water out of it. So it's just barely wet. And that doesn't seem to work. I mean, it's an effect, right? Like if you wanted to kind of create that sort of a pattern, but it doesn't seem to just glaze. Another thing I've seen people do though is use a toothpick to kind of spread it. I don't have any toothpicks though, so that is not something I'm going to be able to do right now. But what I can try doing is just filling an area. This though is more opaque than I was really hoping. Very easy to use, but and inexpensive, but more opaque than what I was hoping for. I'm going to move these over to the side. May end up playing with these again later. We'll see. So no instructions came with the stained glass kit. Ordinary glass into a permanent and stunning work of art. This is not necessarily glass though, and a lot of the other stuff I have is also for glass. So I am actually going to head on over to decoart.com because it says inspiration and helpful tips, and I'm new to this. This is why I'm doing this right now, is so I can learn how to use these materials so that I can create a class around it. And one of the ways to do that is by admitting that I don't know what I'm doing and that I need to look it up. Okay, so I'm going to link their site. This is the set that I have that I'm looking at. And basically we're going to start with the liquid leading. And then we're going to flood the areas with a soft brush or a glass paint brush to, I think, apply this. The way they were, it's shake or stir gently, clean surface with alcohol. Well, this had a film on it, so I'm not worried about that. Apply with a soft brush or glass paintbrush. Use a flooding technique to lay color into areas leaded with stained glass paint 3D liquid leading. Do not overwork. So you can probably only do limited techniques, and also toothpicks would probably be helpful. Allow to cure for 4 days and then bake. So can I apply this and then while it's still wet, add this and then let it cure, or you know, what? So I don't actually know. I'll try it and then see if that doesn't work. Try looking it up. Okay, like all Deco Arts products, these have by the way, this is not really a review. Oh gosh, I can't get this off. It's not really a review of these products because other than like having used acrylic paint and having used Deco Art paints, I don't really like know what I'm doing or have opinions on what I'm doing. If you have a preference for creating stained glass-esque things, like if you have preferred products, let me know. Okay, I had to use a palette knife to bust into that. This was so hard to get open. It was like Arteza acrylics in terms of how hard it was to get open. So That's a no on my part, but whatever. Okay, they should have like an easy pull tab or something. So we're gonna try the leading first. Sorry, my hands are kind of shaky. It's not meant to be perfect. And I know with puff paint, it takes forever for puff paint to like set up. And my problem might be I am like Icarus and I'm trying to fly too close to the sun. That came off easy. Why wasn't it like that? So they said to use a soft brush to fill it. Let's do a little demo here. This is very soft. So I would need to let that set up for a while before I could flood it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull out some of the other stuff I want to test, let it set up for a few hours and then come back to it. But that already means this is probably not a good fit for what I want to do. I have these Deco Love Color Jelly Drops. So they are translucent drops like this. Same container as the leading. And I have the Pastel Love Color Drops. I may have to get another bookmark. I also have Tulip Puff Paint and Tulip Dimensional Fabric Paint. And I've used that on a few other crafts. So these are not like, they are technically art supplies, but these are my arts and crafts supplies. All these other ones I already went ahead and got started. So let's try Love Color Jelly Drop. And it's going to dry clear. These also take a while to dry though. At least the good thing about this is you know it's dry when it's clear. And when I first got these, I opened them and did like a little dot at the top so I could tell what was what. We may actually have to use the inexpensive ones. Those really might actually be the easiest way to do it. Which doesn't break my heart. I love testing out art and craft supplies before I start a project, so it gives me an idea of dry times and what to expect and like how it might actually look, and it gives me some ideas for what I might want to do with the finished product. Okay, then the Peach Dream. And it's nice to have these bookmarks because it allows me to very cheaply test these things out with like no commitment. These are a little hard to squeeze. If you have arthritis, like I do, these might be a little challenging for you, whereas the cheap ones are a little too squeezy. So it's like splitting the difference. These are definitely of a thicker, more three-dimensional consistency though. I'm gonna have to look up instructions for the cheap ones to see if I can find anywhere online where it talks about how long they take to dry. Because if they have a shorter dry time, that would be great. Okay, so that is the, what's it called? Jelly Drops. And then over here are the 3D Liquid Acrylic Writer, Lavender Lolly, whatever. It's these here. So I want to go ahead and put this one aside. It does seem like you could transport them though, and they're not going to just immediately start moving. The purple's moving like a little bit, but not too bad. And it also looks like the cheaper ones might dry translucent. So one thing I know about puff paint is it takes forever to dry. Like multiple hours to set up. But I've seen a few different artists using puff paint to do like faux stained glass. And something else that I'm kind of thinking is I may need to do more digging and research. I was hoping this project would be straightforward. It probably could be if I went with like the least path of resistance, but I'm sometimes not satisfied with how that looks. So these are just the puff paints. They're going to be shiny. This is just a big pack of them from Amazon because I like using these to add like 3D elements. Oh, these are easy to use. These are like almost too easy to use because they just want to come out. So what I'm going to do is just swatch all of them. And I'll probably do that in time lapse, and I'll pull in close so you guys can see what I'm doing. So the instructions on the puff paint are for fabric, and they're basically like let dry flat for 4 hours, and then shoot, I forgot. It was something about you can wash it after 72 hours. Yeah, fabric can be washed inside out after 72 hours. So this is a non-absorbent fabric. It will probably take longer than 4 hours for it to dry because the only way the liquid in it can evaporate is upward instead of like both upward and downward. So I imagine it will probably take a little longer than 4 hours to dry. So I'm going to set this to the side next to its sister. I'm going to show you guys the option I'm not using today. And that is the Pebeo Vitrea 160. Because these are like intended for glass. They both make markers and like little paint pots. And these are even dishwasher safe. So these are more so the real deal in terms of coloring glass. And this is definitely something that I want to... Oh boy, their art on there is super pixelated. That is not a great choice. Anyway, that's something I do want to explore, but today is not the day for this. Okay, now I am going to swatch these inexpensive stained glass window decal things here on this final bookmark. These are a little bit hard to control. They are so soft that it's hard to uncap them without getting the stuff everywhere. It's hard to squeeze them and get a consistent line, but they were so cheap. So it's hard to complain about something that is that cheap because you got to cut the corners somewhere. So while I wait on the Deco art letting to dry so I can try doing a fill in it, I thought I would do something kind of silly. So this is an Artist Loft Paint by Number acrylic surface kit. So it's meant to look like irises in stained glass. It's got little pots of paint and really crummy little paint brushes and a paint marker or a letting marker that looks shockingly like the one I have right here. So 204 numbered sections, 2 brushes, numbered paint pots, a paint liner, 1 printed picture of final painting. It says not shown, but it's right there. 1 numbered reference sheet, 1 pine wood stand. And what I kind of thought is doing something like this might help me get a better feel for how I can create a teachable class with the fleur-de-lis. So the last workshop I did, it was very 1, 2, 3, follow me. I want to keep this one a lot looser and let them make their own decisions. But I do want to be able to offer help if anybody should want that. So I thought trying something like this might help me find a good way to teach it. So we have an acrylic sheet. It has a film on both sides. We have our, I guess this is our color reference. I thought we'd get a printed line art too that we could trace. Whoa, we have our instructions. Okay, so this is not a quick craft. I'll get back to that in a minute. And then we have our, oh, oh my gosh, it's tiny and my eyesight is not so great anymore. It says to use 2 coats of paint. Close the paints tightly. It doesn't say whether or not we should paint on the front or the back. With the bookmarks, we were painting on the back, and that is why we sealed it. I'm not going to do this whole thing. I'm going to do it as time lapse, but I'm not going to do this whole thing with you guys because it's a painting kit. You know, like what do you want from it? I am going to use some double stick tape, I think, to secure this to the back with the film still on. And then I will, I guess, start carefully filling it in with their little devil brushes. Yeah, it looks like it was painted on the front. So I guess that's what I'm going to go do. Also, just to let y'all know, I stupidly put the box on top of the puff paints. So that was me. When I bring these back out after they dried, we're not considering the areas that got smushed by a box. We're considering the areas that didn't get smushed by a box. What's interesting is these also got kind of smushed, and it just kind of pushed some of the colors down a bit. There was some color transference, and I'll show you guys, but these actually held up better. So that's what that looks like. So for this kind of thing, I feel like acrylic markers would have done a better job with this. So if I were to do it again, I would definitely go with the acrylic markers that I have. They would offer better coverage and they'd be a lot easier to use. These little pots don't have much coverage. I ended up giving everything 3 coats and they're hard to use with the included brushes. But I bought this mainly to play around with the concept without having to come up with a test illustration of my own. So after I did kind of the base layer, I allowed it to dry and I went back over it a couple of times. This isn't finished. It's about halfway done. I have to do another layer, but I want to move this aside because the leading on the, let me grab it. Okay. The leading paint here, it's not fully dry, but it is dry enough that I could try dabbing in some of the Deco Art glass paint and see how that works. I do want to swatch all of these, but I'm going to go ahead. They said that you could pour it and then move it a little bit with a brush. So that's, let me give you guys a better angle. Okay. So what this would basically do is give this like a feel that you could then use the brush to kind of move the paint around in. This is possibly not the best brush for it, but, and then hopefully it'll like self-level. That seems like you really don't actually need a lot. So it'll be interesting to see how that dries. I think it'll dry clear. We have gold leading, and I'm going to go ahead and also do a little marker dot, like a swatcher dot on the top of the lid. We have dark leading. My other biggest problem is on this Teflon work surface, it really wants to just scooch all over the place. And then what I want to do, I don't know if I'm gonna have room because this is not a very big bookmark, is I'm gonna do and it probably self-levels, so you probably don't need much. A little inconvenient that they come in the regular Deco Art bottles because they're not great. Just trying to get it thinner coat. Hopefully it'll self-level and we won't see the brush strokes so much. So for context, the class I teach is about an hour and a half long, and they're all meant to be kind of self-contained, so it isn't like I can really like have them pick it up later or finish it up later, so that can sometimes limit what we can do. So I'm trying to find something that will at least dry fast enough that they can take it home with them and it be mostly done. But I've also been very interested in like messing around with clear acrylic sheets this year. I've been interested in that for a while. And sometimes I will plan classes around not only what my students think is interesting, but things about art that I'd like to experiment with. I don't know, justifies the time and the play and the experimentation. Now, historically, stained glass windows were meant to tell stories from the Bible or the lives of saints for people who were not literate or were rudimentarily literate or did not speak Latin. So to me, as a comic artist, stained glass windows and altarpieces are an early form of comics. They're an early form of sequential storytelling. So to me, my interest, and I've always thought stained glass was pretty, but my interest in stained glass is kind of natural. Okay, so it does seem like it can self-level some. And not that I plan on making comic stained glass pieces necessarily. Maybe I will, but that seems like I'm already doing a watercolor comic. That's already like a very time-consuming endeavor. But to me, it seems like a pretty natural interest, especially because in undergrad, the school I went to, our art history focus for undergrad was very much like Renaissance Italy. And I also happen to really love like craftsman arts, the sort of arts that might employ a bunch of people or were just kind of passed on, not necessarily considered fine arts or high arts. So, you know, it's kind of a weird intersection for some of my interests, but to me it all kind of makes sense. I also really like printmaking for very similar reasons. I love art forms that are accessible to the masses, if not art that everyone can do, at least art that everyone can enjoy. And since stained glass windows were meant to go in churches and parishioners could go, well, pretty much at one point anyone could go and enjoy them, that kind of fits in with that like art for everyone mentality. Okay, so that is the Deco Art stained glass paint, the gold and the dark lead leading, and then let's see, magenta. Oh, you can mix these too. I'm just not there yet. Yellow, lime, sky blue, purple, red, amber brown, flame orange, cobalt, and then finally emerald. Also, just checking in with the cheap paints, they do seem to dry faster. It's been a couple of hours, but they do seem to dry faster, and they definitely set up so that they can be transported. So this may be the direction I end up going in if we can find a way to get the leading to set up a little faster, since that's what's going to create our boundaries. To let this dry for a while, so I'm going to set it off to the side, but I thought it was time to check back in with our demo bookmarks. So here are the Deco Arts stained glass, and this is actually the area. Oh shoot, that is still sticky. So up at the top, that's where I actually put the dot at first, and down here is where I'd kind of brushed it out with a brush, and gravity just kind of pulled the drop. So they are self-leveling, but you are going to want them on a stable surface. And as you can see, these are not fully dry yet, even though it's been a few hours. I'm trying to look for something I can use real quick. I think this will work to show you guys that even though these are not fully dry yet, they are fairly transparent. And I think as they continue to dry out, they will become more transparent. Here are the swatches for the inexpensive little ones. They are dry to the touch, but I would let them cure longer. And these are mostly transparent, although not entirely. Some are more so than others. But I think for the project that I'm going to be doing, this or something like this in a paint pot situation would be the best way to go. Here are the tulip paints. So it goes like this. So up here are the puff paints. Down here are the slick paints. The puff paints did shrink a little bit. They're dry to the touch, but I would still let them cure for even longer. And the thing about these is even when they're fully dry, they do stay kind of tacky. So it wouldn't work if you wanted to actually make a bookmark with these. I'm just using the bookmarks because they're a acrylic surface that's pre-cut. And then finally, my initial bookmark. So the alcohol marker. And I was kind of thinking if I did a spray matte sort of thing to put a texture on the acrylic, it might hold the alcohol ink a little bit better. We might get more color. And then I could use like Krylon spray gloss to get it glossy again. So that might be something I experiment with in the future. This is the Deco Craft leading with the Deco Craft stained glass. So you can see that actually worked pretty well, and it did self-level. This green here is, and this is still tacky because I'd applied it really thickly, is the cheaper paint. And then here are the Deco jelly drops. So those are very transparent. And they would be great if they came in more colors or if they had a little more saturation to them because there's just not a lot of color there. And then these are the pastels, and you can see they really stand out on that clear acrylic. So all of these take a pretty long time to dry. So for a class situation, something that can at least, you can like do the thing, you know what I mean? And then take it home to finish curing would be the best situation, I think, for this. leading looks awful and it's hard to control. I think this would work better with stiffer leading and something that's easier to control. Okay, this didn't turn out so great. The liner is pretty blobby and it seems like it blobbed out even more. That's fine. I just kind of wanted to get some ideas from this to see what I could learn. So it definitely solved its purpose, and frankly, I had fun doing it. The materials were, well, actually, it's kind of prettier from the back. It has kind of like an impressionist thing going on, whereas not as pretty from the front. I think I still have the film on here, so we'll do a peely. Yeah, honestly, I kind of like the back better. So if I were to design something like this, I would use acrylic markers like I did for these. They're just easier. I actually can get more opacity with the acrylic markers than I was able to with something like this. But if you wanted to try painting, actually, I really do like it from the back better. If you wanted to try painting on acrylic and you didn't know where you wanted to start, this is not a bad way to kind of get a feel for it. So I guess I'm going to go put that in my bathroom. These have had a chance to dry overnight. So these are the Deco art, and it seems like they are pretty much transparent to translucent. I'm sure if there was some light going behind them, that would be more noticeable. These are the cheap window clings. They're a little sticky, but I think they're fully dry. These are very similar in terms of the color to the Deco art. My set didn't come with a black the way this set did. So I know they make a black, it didn't come with one. But otherwise, the color choices are very similar to what's in this set. These are just maybe a little more translucent. Here are the puff paints, which you might decide one could use as leading. So again, these are the puff ones, and then these are the slick ones. And one of the plus sides to puff paint is you can get it in bigger bottles. And then finally, here's my original test with the alcohol marker and the cheap paints and the jelly drops and the pastel, and then the Deco art with their leading on it. So you guys can see. So I'm waiting for some cheap paints to come in paint pots because I think that's probably the direction I'm going to go. And my librarian just let me know that the fleur-de-lis that they laser cut for me at the makerspace are going to be ready for me to pick up today. So that's not going to be part of this video, but I am looking forward to creating that class and being able to share it with you guys. So guys, I might be a fool. I just realized while there are some duplicate colors, this is not just individual sets. There's more colors mixed in here. So for somebody like me, who's a bit of a completionist, okay, I think it looks like it's 2 sets. So I still have these colors to swatch for you guys. So this is what I'm going to do. I have another bookmark peeled off the front. I want to test how well these might work with puff paint as our leading. So I'm going to start with the puff paint. Let me move this over to the side. This represents these. I find that this larger bottle of puff paint is easier to apply than the little black bottle that they've given us. So I'm going to let this set up for a while. I have errands to run today. And what I want to see is if it will kind of self-level like this does, the Deco art does. I think it probably will. It may need some encouragement with a brush, but I am going to go ahead and swatch the other colors for you guys in time lapse. These little cheapies are kind of prone to exploding. For a class setting, we might be better served if we really wanted to use these particular paints, putting them into pots and having students dab them on, because even with good hand control, knowing these are prone to exploding, I still had some blowout issues. So I want to test how long I have to wait before I can do a fill color, since I'm doing this as a class and we have limited time. So it's been about 10 minutes and I'm going to try filling in one of these. And this is thicker than I would like, but I don't want to use a brush because that's going to disturb our lines. Okay, so that's 10 minutes, and I probably didn't have to do that much, but I did want to make sure that we'd get a fill. Okay, so about 30 minutes has passed since I've done these borders, and I'm about to head out of the house to do something, so I may be gone for a few hours, which kind of messes up the test, but that's okay. So we're gonna try with maybe a thinner layer this time. You can see I picked up a little bit of the black, so it is still wet, but it will hold its shape. But again, you can't really use a brush because it will it'll disturb it. So I'll probably be gone for several hours, and then maybe I can try a brush out on those two triangles over there. Okay, so several hours have passed since I did the initial line, and it is, I wouldn't put pressure on it, but it's solid enough to the touch. So I think that means I can use a brush to apply a thinner coat. So I first put down the puff paint at 126. It is 512 now. All right, so what I'm going to do is I am going to, and I'm working around a cat, I'm going to apply some, and then using a small acrylic brush, I'm going to try brushing it to fill, because in general, if you give these paints a chance to recover, they will self-level. Because if you do it too thick, then you don't really have that stained glass effect. All right. And since it's been a few hours, I'm going to risk it. Oh yeah, look, that's still wet. Hopefully that'll level out, but that's still wet. So we really want, our goal is for a much thinner fill. I think I'll switch over to the pink for the last one. All right, this is the last layer for this test. So some of these have dried. They're still a little sticky, but they're mostly dry. This one I think is still wet. So we're going to try doing a really thin layer. And I probably could have gone a little bit further from the edge. It is 7:49 right now, so it's been about 3 hours. And Bowie is being very insistent that he be in my lap, so he may bump the camera. Gonna add just a little more and see if I can get it to cover. So the red has fully dried and it's transparent. The orange and the yellow, though, are not, either haven't fully dried, they may have been too thick, or they're not going to be transparent. It's kind of hard to tell. Looking at these thinner samples, though, I think that the orange and the yellow are just not going to be that see-through. So that's one of the downsides with these cheaper ones, is that they're not as transparent as the Deco Art ones. So these have had a chance to dry out overnight. You can see the really thin application with the red and the pink that is translucent. With the yellow, you can kind of see through it. With the orange, you can kind of see through it. So the thinner the application, the more translucent it's going to be. These are still a little bit tacky. So with any of these kind of window cling slash sun catcher things, you do need to let them dry for a pretty significant amount of time. So these came in. So this is, I think, this, but in a pot format with the crummy little brush included. So this would be perfect for a class. I will take one out. Actually, it looks like there's two brushes included, sorry. And then also these, the Plaid Gallery Glass. I think this was like the popular color set. So, because once I develop a hyperfocus, or a new hyperfocus for the moment with ADHD, I have to chase it all the way down the trail. This is the one that I see like the most of. This is the one that has like the most support from the company in terms of like, they will make like kits where you can buy the line art and transfer it on to, they sell like cuttable plastic. They sell all kinds of things for this actually. I'm going to start with the cheaper one, and I'm going to have all the links, if you guys are curious, in the description. I've been taking show notes. So it comes with 2 cheap brushes, which honestly, for all these window cling kits, you know, that's about, you just need something to push the paint around is mostly what I've noticed. So this is kind of like a hybrid between that iris one I did with you guys from, what's its name? Artist Loft. And, brain is just not working today. I'll just spoil it for you guys. We're preparing to get another pet roof rat. So my brain is like in roof rat mode right now. We're actually going to pick him up from a breeder who specializes in roof rats. I'm really excited about that. So that's where my brain's at. What I'm going to do though is I'm going to make, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm going to make a little really janky. Okay, so what I noticed from this is we can kind of start working with it. It's not fully dry, but we can start working with it 30 minutes to an hour. Let it pick up a skin on it, and then you can start using these kind of things. So that is what I'm going to do. Does that work the best for my classroom needs? No, not really. An hour and a half is a challenging amount of time to work with for art classes. If you're not doing just like a drawing class, or you're doing one very, very specific thing. So this is definitely going to be a challenge for me to find a way to make it all work in the allotted time frame. So this is going to take forever to set up. So I'm going to move that over to the side and start working on the plaid colors, which was not my intention. But you know, when you're a genius and you have a genius idea that you impulsively have to follow through, sometimes that means you have to shuffle things around. It was not my intention to use all of my inexpensive acrylic bookmarks as testers, but at least they're getting used for something. I'm going to grab a color. I'm going to do all this in time lapse, I think, and take notes. I'm going to grab a color. I'm going to open the color because they all have this like plastic band. So for example, this would be the color Black Onyx. I'm going to start a trash bin. Oh, look, you gotta. So it's got one of these also. Really got to start a trash bin then. Put that right there for just now. Okay, going back to my plan. We're going to do a dot at the top as color reference. And we're going to do a line. And honestly, these will probably blob out a little bit. So that is Black Onyx. Plaid always has, it smells like Mod Podge. Plaid paints always smell like Mod Podge. I think they come from the same parent company. They are both all probably using the same plasticizer base, but it's like Mod Podge has this distinct smell to it, and say that 3 times fast. Plaid products always smell like Mod Podge. Now, some of these plaid paints, or the plaid glass, gallery glass paints, are special effects paints. So I'm going to try using black onyx as though it was leading, because I think that's what this one is supposed to do. And I'm going to... I think this is supposed to be kind of somewhere between the Deco art, where it's in like one of the Deco art bottles, you know what I mean? And like something with a finer tip. Although that's already looking like it's spreading out quite a bit. We will see. It's this one has had a chance to set up a little bit, so it's dried. So these are going to dry a lot darker and hopefully clearer. Then they go down, kind of in keeping with Mod Podge. If you've ever worked with Mod Podge, you know when you first apply it, you're like, oh, that didn't look right. And then it dries and you're like, okay, that makes sense. So I have no idea how long this takes before it starts to set up. I could do a little test for science. Okay, so this onyx up here at the top was done about 30-40 minutes ago. So 30-40 minutes, maybe an hour before it's set up enough for us to move forward with it. All right, so the tulip puff paint has had about an hour to set up. What that means is it has kind of a skin to it. So these are little paint pots, and they come with very inexpensive little brushes, but I think for the most part the inexpensive brushes will do the job just fine. Might even be better than if we had bought expensive ones. Kind of hoping these will dry clear. Does actually seem like if you're careful, you can get it to work. It doesn't actually, like, the materials don't look impressive. So this is an art class for adults and older teens. I hope they don't think I'm just trying to go with like the cheapest, babyest stuff. Sometimes the cheapest, babyest stuff though is what will work. Cause we'll see how that dries. Right now, It's not my favorite, but you know, not everything has to be your favorite. I'm just hoping they dry clear. So this is a little 12 color set. We don't necessarily need 12 colors. What I really needed was like a variety of purples, since we're doing fleur-de-lis. But honestly, this might work out because there are greens in there. And a yellow. Another thing I'm noticing that makes this a little bit of a challenge is because these bookmarks are so light, they want to move around. So that actually makes it harder to do like a straight line on them, because they want to move with the brush or they want to move with the puff paint. Now, what we're going to be working with in class is a thicker laser cut acrylic, so from the Makerspace. So I think the moving around won't be so much of a problem. That is the cheap pot paints. The orange is already starting to dry, and it just seems like it might be like kind of like those paints that came with the Artist Loft set. Like, yes, technically, but it's not. So when I was a girl and we would do Suncatcher kits, you would get these like really clear, almost juicy, like Kool-Aid kind of colors that would come in these like little enamel pots. And that's what I was hoping to find. It's kind of what I was hoping these would turn into. That is not necessarily what I'm finding today. The closest to that are the little tubes. Oops, sorry. I'm going to grab one for you. The little tubes do a better job. Like, look how much more translucent these are than these are. But I could always poach all the little brushes from that kit. It doesn't have to stay with it. Anyway, food for thought, and we're not totally done yet because I still want to test out some of the special effect colors from the gallery glass. Man, why is that a hard sentence to say? So one of the nice things about the Plaid gallery glass is that when it's dry, it gets dark and clear. So it actually becomes pretty easy to tell when it's dry. This is not fully dry because it's not fully clear, but it does have a skin on it. And I do think we can move on to the next part. But I wanted to show you guys, this is the cheap little paint pots. So, not exactly. It is neither transparent nor really truly translucent, nor is it opaque, and thus it serves no one. Now, I only have 4 squares, so what I want to test is possibly, maybe, Snow White, the green shimmer, clear frost, and crystal clear, although honestly I think this one was Snow White right here, and it doesn't really look like, it looks like it might dry clear. So I'm gonna put that aside and grab a different color. I want to test opacity maybe, so maybe we'll go with like citrus yellow, which is this one here, which looks like it might not dry clear. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start, I need a clean cup of water, but I want to start with the 2 clear ones, and we'll do the top 2, and then for the colors we'll do the bottom 2. All right, I got my clear cup of water. Let's start with clear frost, and I'm going to use one of the cheap brushes, and I'm gonna try to get it to fill the area. So clear frost should dry with like a frosted glass effect. Oh, you gotta be careful when capping these. It is so easy to miscap these. Maybe those of you with better attention to detail will manage. And I am hoping that it will self-level and we won't see brush strokes. I might need a little more. I don't know. We'll see how that dries. Okay, next is crystal clear. So my hope with this one is that it just dries like high gloss and completely clear. So honestly, it's probably similar to like Mod Podge or like any other acrylic sealant that doesn't have any color. So something else that might be interesting about crystal clear is you might be able to add some water-based color to it, maybe even food coloring or dye, and get it to add like a little bit of color to it. Like if you wanted, let's say like a skin tone, like a really faint skin tone. You could also maybe mix this with some of your other colors to get a really light version of the color rather than just trying to apply a really thin film, if that makes sense. Okay, now we're going to try, so that was clear frost and crystal clear. Now we're going to try citrus yellow, and this is not a special effect, it's just a color. And these do have, if you don't like how Mod Podge smells, you're not going to like these. It doesn't bother me so much. I'm just pointing it out because some people are really sensitive to strong smells. And since we don't have smell-o-vision yet, I do think that's like a property that folks should be aware of. Okay, so hopefully that will self-level out. And I'll clean the brush again. And I'm just using that cheap brush, and I'm just doing it to spread. And then green shimmer. And maybe the white would be useful for adding like just a touch of opacity. Maybe it'll depend on how these dry. Okay, that was maybe a little too thick, but you can see you don't actually have to fill the whole area. Okay, so I want it to spread. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll find out. Let that dry out. So these tests are inspired by Japanese hard candies. I am using some acrylic blanks that are like ornament blanks. And I'm going to start by doing the leading for the Deco art test, since the leading needs 8 hours to dry before you can start to fill it. These bottles are challenging to control and the paints are thick. That also means that if you don't carefully coax the paint, it will just sit or streak. I think for this sort of faux stained glass, I may prefer the gallery glass over that. I'm also doing a test with puff paint, and I started with just the center for that to allow it to develop a skin, and then I moved on from there. And I did something similar with the cheap tubes because they start to spread a lot, so I started with the center and I let that set, and then I worked from there. I'm also using the Love color, both the jelly and the pastel. And I thought the end result for these were very cute, but it's not really what I'm looking for in terms of stained glass. Same for the puff paint. And I'm kind of just setting all these tests up and kind of working as different aspects of it are dried. So it's going to be kind of what the visuals you see are going to be kind of all over the place, but I do actually have which project is which labeled on the paper itself, along with color notes. So if you're actually watching, you should be able to follow along with it. I know that might be kind of challenging. So I'm just going to kind of read through my notes for you guys as I go with this. So we already talked about the Deco glass. As for the puff paint, I started with the center and I let it develop a skin, and then I moved on from there. And I noticed that the puff paint actually holds its own very well and it isn't prone to intermixing. So I went ahead and I finished it out. It is not self-leveling. You do need a steady hand, which I don't have. And I felt like it kind of looked like a sugar cookie, and it is also not transparent. With the cheap tubes, these tend to spread out a lot. So I started with the center and I let it set and then I worked from there. They are very self-leveling, so you can't do fine details with those. There isn't enough body to them, so I let them set up a bit before I moved on. And even though I waited a bit, the green still moved quite a bit. These probably work best with leading to hold the colors in place, and I ended up trying it again with leading, as you guys will see. And I am aware that I am probably working too thickly with all of these paints. With the gallery glass, these set up fairly fast, so I started with the center and I let it set and then I moved on. They go down opaque and dry clear, so it's going to be interesting to see how the colors shift over time. With the Deco Art Jelly and Pastel, the pastel really holds its shape, so I used it to fill all the forms and then I let it set and then I filled it with jelly as the jelly tends to spread. The paste or the pastel does a good job holding the jelly, while the jelly does spread some in that it can't keep sharp shapes on its own. I don't need to outline it to keep it on the ornament. I look forward to seeing how the combination dries. The puff paint and the cheap, which is what you guys see here, puff paint details were too small for me to really get a brush in, so I just kind of poured. I did try a couple of fun things, but nothing too outrageous. And I set up another puff paint in cheap. That's this heart one that has larger areas. To try and utilize the brush in it after I've allowed the puff paint to dry overnight. All in all, though, this was really fun for me. I love novelty and exploring different crafts. It's kind of expensive to do on a whim, so I can only indulge in something like this every so often. That said, for me, all of these are challenging to control because my hands shake a lot when applying the outlines, which does make the final result look worse. So if you have steadier hands, this may work out better for you. I do wish somebody would come up with a method of adding leading. That was a little easier to control. I do know the gallery glass does have like leading strips, and apparently those used to be great in the past and they've really gone downhill since. So this is the Deco glass and I'm just kind of filling it in, and I found those pour bottles really challenging to use. So I used tulip puff paint to do the leading on this, and I'm using the cheap paints, and I'm just kind of playing around with fill and swirl techniques, using the brush to kind of move the paint around so that we're not using so much of it to fill an area. It does self-level, but it's not completely self-leveling, as you guys saw with some of the other tests. So you do need to use brushes to kind of move it around and to kind of thin it out. It does dry very transparent while still maintaining its color though. So if you do apply it thickly, that's not the end of the world. It's not the worst thing, but it does sort of start to feel like a waste of paint if you're applying it too thickly. Something else I noticed is that when it dries, it really like evaporates out. So it dries quite concave in comparison to the leading. We tried all kinds of things today in our quest to play around with faux stained glass. We tried out a variety of paints. Some of them are more designed for this than others, and we also tried out a kit. So I'm going to walk you guys through the swatches one more time and kind of give you my thoughts as we go. So these are swatches of Deco Art's stained glass paint. I believe these are probably intended to be the most permanent without being like a true paint for glass, but you can paint on glass with these. They have several colors of leading. So I have the gold and then kind of the graphite color, and then they have some basic colors. They are intermixable, but I have found that these do the best when they have a border on them. And I don't like the way the bottle works. I find it the least intuitive, the most annoying. We also tried out a variety of other Deco Art products from the jelly drops, which I liked better, and I wish these were available in more colors. These actually have more body and more ability to hold their shape, as well as the pastel. I think it's like their 3D writer. We experimented with opacity, and we also tried out some very inexpensive tube paints. We also tried coloring our acrylic with alcohol marker, but we didn't really get a whole lot of result with that. That might be good though if you want a really light skin tone. We also tried tulip puff paints and slick paints, which could be used as your leading or could be used to add opaque elements to your work. We swatched and tried out the inexpensive paints, and I found that they actually worked more like what I was looking for a project like this. So that was a good direction to go. We tried out an Artist Loft stained glass kit, and it was pretty not miserable. I had fun doing it, but it was not the result I was really looking for. And I don't love that I was never able to achieve like good opacity. And if I were to do this like this again, I would use acrylic markers instead of paint pots. So very similar to the techniques I did in my acrylic bookmark class, which are kind of a combination of being inspired by stained glass and by techniques used in cell shading for animation. I also tried Plaid gallery glass, which is, I like it better. It also has clear and frosted options. They also have holographic options and sparkle options, but not all of the colors are transparent, and they don't denote which ones are going to be more opaque. Like this yellow is actually very opaque. And I think that's something that's helpful to know before you commit to using a product or buying a product. I did do little dot swatches on the tops of all my bottles so that I will know that in the future, but I do think that's something consumers should know from the jump. I also tried out, so I found these when I was looking up cheap paint pots for stained glass or something like that. These are just cheap acrylic paints in pots. They are not translucent. What I was hoping for was something like these cheap tube paints, but in a pot form, because that would have made it easier for me to distribute to my students. We also played around with using brushes to kind of get our paint to move and to get a thinner layer. I also created these samples, these demos, to help me get a good feel for it and to also kind of display the practical effects that we're going to get from each of these brands. So one more time, I'll go through them. This is the Deco Arts with the Deco Art leading. This took a long time because to set up the leading, you have to let it dry for 8 hours. These were done with puff paints. Once I realized that they actually hold their shape quite well. You don't have to let each segment dry before you do another segment. So this could be done rather quickly, but the dry time is going to be long. And something else to consider is that with a lot of these, they have a quote unquote cure time if you're not baking them in the oven of like this one, the Deco Art, it's like 21 days. So just keep that in mind. This isn't as quick a project as it might lead you to believe. This is the Deco Art Jelly Drops and Pastel. I think the color and the translucency of the jelly drops are really nice. I wish they had more colors in this range. I like the bottle for these and the way they kind of apply a lot better than I like the Deco Art stained glass bottles. Those bottles are awful. Then we have the Gallery Glass, which also does come with its own leading colors, but I don't really care for their leading colors all that much. I'm looking for my sample here. This color here, it's just too transparent for me. I would want like a metallic or like a like almost like a black. So something kind of similar to the gunmetal sort of color we get, or the gold that we get with the Deco Art. But these actually set up quicker than I thought they would. I did let it dry overnight, so it did take a while to dry, but you could work more quickly with these and then let them dry out. This smells, when you're applying it, it smells just like Mod Podge. So it really wouldn't surprise me if it's the same base acrylic with some colorant added to it, maybe even like glossy Mod Podge. So those of you who like to experiment and play around and save some money, try it and let me know how adding dye or food coloring to Mod Podge, if it has the same effect. On that note, some people will use like Elmer's glue as Mod Podge, and I know when we were kids, we would do fake stained glass with Elmer's glue. So that might be another, many of y'all had like a Space Maker kind of art supply box, and you'd fill the top with glue, and then you'd put your Crayola markers in it to give it color. That was a thing at my school, okay? I'm thinking it's like similar lines to that, but I actually think this one turned out really cute. It looks the most like the kind of candies I was trying to replicate by doing this. Then we have the inexpensive ones. These are still sticky, so I'm going to let them dry. There's like no instructions for how to use these, but I found that these kind of work the best on a budget for what I need for the class. So I did one more sample where this is, like I showed you guys earlier, the closest to what I'm going to do in the class, along with some fun techniques, using a combination of tulip puff paint, which you can get fairly inexpensive, and the really cheap paints. So I had a lot of fun doing this. I love playing around with different art supplies and trying out different kind of techniques. Usually I like to take a class with somebody else because I like it when they invest in the supplies, so I don't have to buy a bunch of stuff. But I had a lot of fun doing this. I hope you guys found it inspiring. I am going to be doing some faux stained glass pieces, and I was thinking I would share the templates for those pieces over on Patreon. So if you decide this is something you also want to do, you will find the templates for those over on Patreon. I am not going to share the templates for the flowers. I'm sorry if you were hoping I would. I just couldn't get the double stick tape to come off cleanly without tearing them. So, and also I did them on like just cheap copy paper, so there's just not enough structural rigidity to, you know, make it worth salvaging. But anyway, I had fun playing around with these things. I hope I answered some of your questions. If you found this video to be helpful, please make sure you leave a like to tell YouTube that, you know, people do actually care about crafters and artists. And maybe consider sharing this video on a community or a platform with other people who are interested in these kind of things. So like Facebook or Reddit. Your positive word of mouth means the world to me. I also want to thank my patrons over on Patreon. Their support enables me to do these kind of like weird little rabbit hole projects. So if you enjoy things like this and you have the financial means to do so, you can join me at patreon.com/nattosoup. If you live in Southeast Louisiana, you do not have to live in St. Charles Parish, and you would like to come take one of my classes for free with the St. Charles Parish Public Library. I teach Art Lab once a month. It's the first Wednesday of every month with the public library system. All you have to do is register, and we pay for everything, and they pay for me. So if you want to take an in-person class with me, I would love to see you sometime. Check out their event calendar, and that's how you can register in advance. And I hope you guys, if you have better faux stained glass techniques that you think I should know about, let me know down in the comments. I know I haven't tried everything. This wasn't meant to be an exhaustive thing. It was just meant to be an excuse to play around with some things and indulge in interest. So let me know down in the comments below. I hope you guys have a wonderful day. I hope to see you guys again soon. And hopefully this was helpful in enabling you to make art and crafts a habit. Bye, guys.